Alright guys, welcome back to the MVC framework tutorial. In the last video what we did was we created an abstract class called custom validator that we're going to extend in order to do validation in a more MVC and object-oriented programming type of way. This will create a better experience for you using your framework, and will allow you to extend to add your own custom validators if you need to. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to start writing our first validator. But before we do that, let's go ahead and go to our register controller, and we need to do away with the old way of doing validation. So the first thing that we're going to do is at the top of this, we don't need validation anymore, so go ahead and get rid of that. We're actually going to get rid of this posted values array as well. And then what we want to do is at the top here, we're just going to say new user is equal to new users. All right, and get rid of, let's see, posted values. Don't need that either. I'm going to go ahead and this where it says validation check, I'm going to go ahead and just comment all this out here because I'm going to leave it for reference, but we will get rid of that at some, in the near future when we're done writing our validators. And then inside of this if statement where it says validation passed, go ahead and get rid of this if statement. And then what I want you to do is we don't need this new users right here. We want that to happen at the top of the method now. And right here where it says new user, register new users, we're going to do that a little bit different. So here what we want to do is say new user, and we'll just assign post here. And then what we want to do is just say new user, save. And then we can get rid of this line that says new user, register new user. And right here, actually, what we want to do is only redirect if this fails. So now the save function, it will actually return false if it fails. So if it fails validation, so we're going to say if not, new user save. That's going to happen inside this if statement. Then what we'll do is we will actually do the router redirect at that point. Alright, so there we go. So this is, let's see, we're going to be able to get rid of all these lines of code here. So we have the if statement to handle the post. The last thing that we need, last couple little things that we need to do here in order to get going with our form is we don't want to call this view post anymore. We just want to pass down new user. So we're going to say this view new user, and we're going to go ahead and pass new user to that. And then display errors, instead of being validation display errors, this is actually going to be new user. And then remember we created that method called get error messages. Okay, and that is a method there. And let's see, for now, that will do it for us in this register controller. There's a couple things that we're going to have to do inside of our actual register.php. So if you look in your views, go to register and then open register.php. And we're going to clean this up. This is an issue. We've added some new methods to our form helpers class, and we're going to have to update our form helpers class with one more method to make all this work. So the first thing to do, though, since we already know it, is let's just go ahead and change all of these while we're at it to be the new way of doing things, which will be using our form helpers. So we have a static method called input block. Okay, the first parameter that we pass in the input block is going to be the type. So in this case, it'll be text. And then the next thing that we pass is a label. So in this case, it'll be first name. and then we pass it in our name for the input, and also it'll be the ID. So in this case, it'll be fname. The next thing we're going to do is pass in our value. So the value for this is actually going to be this new user, and then we're going to pass in fname. Okay, the next thing that we can do is give our input some attributes. So we're going to give it a class, and we're going to just give it a class of, let's give it a class of form control, and then let's see, what was that? Excuse me, I'm going to look at my reference code here. Just give me 1 second as I open that up. Right, so let's see, input small is what I'm looking for. So this is going to be input dash sm, and then our last thing, and this allows us to put attributes on the div, the surrounding div. So we're just going to give that a form group class. Okay. So close up our PHP tags, and now we can get rid of this entire div for our first name. Okay. And then I'm going to copy this right there and replace first with last. And then this will actually be L name instead of F name, and this will be L name. And then that allows us to get rid of this entire div. And then what I want to do is copy that again, and we're going to change this to email. L name will change to email as well. This will change to email. Eventually what we'll do as well is we'll change the type to an email, but for now I don't want to do that because I want to do email validation on the back end. So we'll go ahead and get rid of our email group now. And let's see, let's do our username. So this is going to be username, and username. Also, let's see, I forgot, I want that to be capital. Now we can get rid of this block here. Alright, the next one that we need is going to be, actually I just copied this. And what we want to do here is we're going to set this to a type of password. Password, the name of the field will also be password, and the name of the object will also be password, and then we can get rid of this block. The next thing that we're going to do is copy that one again, the password one, and we'll change this to confirm. And then right now, let's just leave this as password. We're going to come back and actually change that, but we're going to change this to confirm password, and we will come back. We're going to add a new function that we need there, but for now we'll just leave that. And then what we want to do is add our submit block here. Oops. Got a new keyboard, it's a little hard to type on. Alright, so FH, and then we're going to do a submit block. Close our PHP tags. And then our submit block, our first is our button text, so it'll be register. And our second parameter is the actual input attributes. So we'll give it a class. We'll make that class button primary, and button large. And then we'll give the surrounding div attributes as well, and it's just going to be class We'll give it a class of TextWrite. Alright, so that'll allow us to get rid of this whole input block there. You can see our form is getting cleaned up quite a bit. There's just a little bit more cleanup that we need to do in order to start using this validation correctly. And what we need to do is, if you go to, just go ahead and go to core and then open up validate and scroll down to display errors. What we're going to do is copy this entire method, and then what I want you to do is open up form helpers, so fh.php, and at the bottom here, before your closing curly brace there, go ahead and paste that in. The first thing that we're going to do is make sure that this is a static function, so it's going to be, we're going to change this to a public static function, and this is going to take errors as an array. So instead of looking at this errors, we're just going to look at errors. And then right here in this first HTML block, I want to go ahead and add a div with a class equal to, and we'll close that div here, and the class we're going to set that equal to is form errors. Let me just double check that that's correct. Go back to register here. That is correct. All right, and then after our closing unordered list tag, we'll go ahead and close that div. And then what we want to do is we can simplify a lot of this. So instead of saying this errors is error, we're going to say this errors, and we're going to say as field error. Okay. So we can get rid of this if statement. So go ahead and get rid of all of this here and the else, and then get rid of this part of the if statement. And what we're going to do in each part of this is just add a list item and then the JavaScript here. So the list item of text danger, we're not going to do the, this would just be error. Okay. And then the field, we're going to replace error 1 here with field. Okay, we'll save that out, and then go back to register.php, and what we're going to do right here is we're going to say fh, now we have display errors, and we're going to pass in this display errors, and then we can get rid of this line of code here. So let's make sure we didn't break anything. Let's go back here and refresh the page. Looks good so far. We won't actually see any errors yet, but in a minute we're going to add our minimum validator, and we're going to start testing this out. So let's jump now. See how long we've been recording. We're at about 13 minutes. So what we're going to do now is go ahead and let's leave these files open, I guess. But what we want to do is inside of core validators, we're going to add a new file and call this one minvalidator.php. And then we're going to open and close some curly braces. And we're going to say class minValidator. And this is going to extend our custom validator. All right, and I'm not going to put the run validation method here because I want you to see what happens when we don't do that. Let me go ahead and open my reference on that just really quick. Okay, so if you remember inside of our users.php, we created this public function validator, and then we ran the min validator. We passed the field of username with a rule of 6, and then a message. So let's try it out and see if it works. So if I just go ahead here now and hit register, we have an error, and this is an expected error. I wanted to show you this because it says class minValidator contains one abstract method and must therefore be declared abstract or implement the remaining methods. run validation. So this tells you exactly, if you ever see this, it's because you forgot to do the run validation method. And that's because we created custom validators as an abstract class, which is exactly what we wanted to do. So in order to make this work, we're going to go ahead and go to min validator, and we're going to go ahead and create our public function run validation. And in this run validation, we are going to we're going to actually just return false real quick. We're going to change that. Now this run validation will always either just return false or it will return true. Okay, let's go ahead now and check that out. If I not going to refresh, but hit enter and then hit register. Let's see, run validation. We return false on that, so it shouldn't pass. Let's go ahead and look at our users here. New min validator, make sure it's named the same thing, validator. Let's look at our model really quick. So when it runs validator, runs validation, validator has the field as a key. So let's just go ahead now and look at that. So I'm going to do an HDND here, and this is just for me to debug this validator. This is a pretty complex refactor, so you'll probably run into some issues. But just use common sense. And so here's our validator. Success is false on that. The message is username must be at least 6 characters. That's good. The field is username. So it looks like everything's set up correct. Let's look at, and the reason that went through is because in the model protected is set to true here. So let's go ahead and see why that is. Go back to the model, and well, that's because we put this dump and die here. So let's actually move that dump and die down some. I'm going to put it right here at the bottom of this method. And let's just go ahead and try that again. Now if we look into that users class, what we're looking for, okay, we do have an error, and it does say false here. So I think everything's correct there. Let's go back and get rid of this dump and die. And validation errors. Let's look at the save method and make sure I have that correct. We're running this validator, which that runs. We're saying if this validates. So let's go ahead and do our dump and die here. And we want to know if this validates. It should not validate because we're just returning false. But that is not working. Okay, so it didn't make it into this if statement. And I think I know why. And so we need to go back to our returning false on our save function. Go back to our register controller, and we're saying if not, and this should actually only redirect if that's true. So I just had a logic error here in the register controller, which is really dumb. Sorry about that. So let's go ahead and get rid of our dump and die, because this should work now. Let's get rid of this dump and die. And then we're going to go here and let's go back to the register form and hit register. And now we see that we get our message, username must be at least 6 characters for our username. So let's go now and look at the actual min validator. And actually, instead of returning false, let's do the logic, which isn't going to be hard at all. What we want to do here is we're going to say value is equal to, and what we'll do is say this. Now remember, we have access to this model, and then what we want to look for is this field. Okay, so what this does is this syntax here allows us to pass this field as a property into this model. So we're getting the value of that. Okay, so that will be value, and then we're going to say pass. We want pass to equal. We're going to do a check here. We're going to use the string length function, and we're going to say if value, okay, if the string length of value is greater than or equal to, and then this rule. So if you remember, this rule was 6, and then we're just going to return pass. Okay. So now if I go back and we refresh, just get the same thing when we hit return here, and then if I just do a couple letters, it's the same thing. But if I go over 6 characters, now if we go to localhost and refresh, we've actually added that record to the database. And that's just because we haven't done all the validation that we want. This isn't completely filled out, but this is working as intended, because if you look in our inside of our users thing, the only thing we're validating is that the username is 6 characters. Alright, so that is our minimum validator. Let me see how long we've gone on this recording. Okay, so about 22 minutes or so. We'll go ahead and wrap it up for now with the minimum validator. In the next video, we're going to continue on with the rest of our validators, which will be pretty easy, and then we'll finish refactoring our forms. So we'll talk to you later, and I'll see you in the next video.